All right, Section 3, main generator. The generator, general description. The generator is a shot-wounded direct current machine standard of the railway construction having the single housing supported by the anti-friction bearing at the front end. It is arranged with a directly connected through-lead flexible coupling to the engine flywheel. The machine is self-ventilated with air being drawn through the openings of the front housing, circulated through the armature ducts and around the field coils, and discharged with a fan through air outlets in the flywheel housing. Additional communicating and main shunt fields and an auxiliary field with auxiliary fields are mounted with the main field of the poles. Auxiliary field is energized with the battery source to be provided with a separate excitation, but the generator ensuring that the rapid positive buildup of the generated voltage, improving the voltage regulation, and with the application to the particular class of service. The service is on the series field with the supply with available starting services in the case where the generators use the motor starting the engine. Maintenance, general information, keeping the generator clean and dry, keeping the generator from dust, and occasionally blowing it out with a dry compressed air hand or bellows. If the high air pressure is used, the nozzle of the air hose should not be held too close to the windings, as the pressure may damage the insulation taping. Bearings and lubrication. The generator is equipped with the ball bearing of the communicator end, and to ensure the continued satisfactory operation of this bearing, it must be properly lubricated. All dirt of the other worn matters, excluding the contact with the bearing. The lubrication with the grease is held with the bearing chamber around the bearing, and there's two steel lubricant seals at once each of the side of the bearing. The bearing is provided with the overflap of the excess grease that must be best avoided with over lubricating of the bearings, as well as the under lubrication. It is recommended that 1 of the ounce of the grease of the Westinghouse M7280-1 added to the bearing after the 1 month service every 6 months thereafter. If the grease leakage over the flow is noticed a period of longer than 6 months between the greasing, it should not be allowed, or greasing should be allowed. Alright, fittings should be thoroughly cleaned before adding any grease at periods ranging from 1 to 3 years. The outer bearings cap should be taken off with the old grease removed with the bearing of the grease chamber as by the washing, consisting of equal parts of the kerosene, denatured alcohol. All caked and hardened grease will be removed. The cleansing liquid should be then removed from washing it with a hot and light oil before repacking the bearings with new grease. Brushes and commutators. The brushes are set in the neutral position at the factory. The brushes and brush holders should be inspected at least once a month to ensure that the presence of the grit and dirt have not caused any of the brushes to stick in the brush holders. That proper the spring tension is maintained with the valve specified with the general data sheet. Back brush pressure is readily measured by using the small spring balance attached with the pressure finger directly over the brush, pushing the straight up the line with the brush travel, and the finger is just lifted clear of the brush. If the brush pressure is incorrect, move the brush holder and adjust the files. With the brush holder clamped in a vise, insert the screwdriver into the end of the slotted pin and relieve the tension on the cotter pin. 2. Remove the cotter pin, increase and decrease the tension as required, and replace the cotter pin. When the brush holder is to be put on the back and placed carefully, this should be taken from the brush holder back and kept in the distance of 1/8 of an inch from the commutator. This is necessary to maintain this in order to keep the brushes from chattering and breaking. A sheet of 1/8 of inch fiber provides with a convenient gauge. See that the tab of the bolts of the clamp of the brush holder pins are kept tight and that a pigtail shunt with the brush holders are accurately fastened under the screws provided for the purpose of the brush holder castings. Keep the communicator clean, wiping in the frequently intervals with a clean canvas clothing from the free of lint. A communicator that is taken, polished, and shown no signs of the wear requires other attention to require from the badly worn into is repaired with the turning of the preferably grinding of the stone. Never use emery cloth or emery paper on the communicator. Instruction for dismantling and reassembling a generator tools. The facility dismantling of the generator with the shop should be equipped with a set of special tools which may be made according to the tool drawing, including these sections may be purchased with the Westinghouse Electrical Manufacturing Company. Dismantling the generator from the engine. In case necessary to make internal repairs for the armature bearing and the field coils, the following procedure should be followed in taking the generator apart. Electrical parts should be connected. Should first be removed between the generator and other operation. 2. The remove of the bolts holding the coupling disc to the flywheel. Remove the bolts holding the generator from the engine bell housing. Remove the bolts holding the generator supporting the feet to the mountings. 5. Slide the generator away from the engine. Insert the end of wedges between the armature and the poles to prevent the armature from rubbing the two poles. The complete generator may now be lifted from its mounting and removed from the locomotive. Removing the armature. If necessary, to remove the armature for the generator, first dismantle the generator from the engine as described in preceding paragraph. Lift the brushes far enough out of the brush box that they will not slide back to the communicator. 3. The project of the communicator, wrapping it with a high finish paper. Remove the both handling coupling disc of the generator coupling flange. This allows the coupling disc to the fan assembly to be removed. Permits the handling of the armature will ropes without damaging to the disc. Remove the Almite fitting from the bearing cap at the front end. Remove the 1.5 inch bolts from that hold the front of bearing cartridge in the housing. Insert the 2 armature removal studs in the 2 of the 4 tap the holes in the cartridge. These studs are not furnished with the generator, but can be similar to the long 1.5 inch studs shown on the tool drawing. The studs help them to keep the communicator striking the brush holders. 7. The armature can now be removed from the generator by passing the heavy rope around the armature, moving the armature slowly toward the coupling end of the generator. A piece of the pipe will be needed over the shaft extension and the communicator to permit sliding of the armature through the farm enough to be handled entirely through the other end. The carefully must be taken when the armature does not rub on the poles during the operation, that the communicator does not rub on the brush holder box. Moving armature bearing. Remove the armature from the generator as described in the preceding paragraph, blocking its horizontal position. Remove the 6 bolts which hold the outside bearing cap to the bearing cartridge. Remove the cap. Straighten the lock washer. Remove the bearing lock nut using the special spanner wrench. Use a special puller tool shown in the attached tool drawing. Screws and studs into the bearing cartridge placed against the shaft of the steel leads with the holes drilled in each the same spacing as the tape spool holes in the bearing cartridge. Tighten the nuts and the outside of the plates until the bearing assembly is pulled off the shaft. To remove the bearing from the cartridge, tap the cartridge with a rawhide mallet and slim the bearing out of the donut, pry out of the hammer on the bearing. Wrap the bearing in corrective bearing protective covering. The bearing is to be cleaned and inspected before reassembly. The grease in the bearing will be served to prevent re-rusting. Assembling armature bearing. Refer to the bearing assembly drawing as guided with the proper bearing assembly. Place the armature preferably in the vertical position, or the hole in the light larger than the armature diameter, cut in a low wooden table or bench together in some wooden wedges to keep the armature dropping through the serves very well. Clean all the parts thoroughly with the starting of the assembly. Carefully inspect the bearing cracks for pitting and excessive wear. Care must be also taken to keep all the dirt and grit away from the ball bearings. Place the bearing cartridge grease thrower in over the high temperature oil, such as the compressor oil, the Westinghouse, the PD number 2268 oil temperature at 100 degrees Celsius or 215 to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Support all the parts at approximately 2 inches above the bottom of the to allow the dirt to drop below the bearing to prevent the heat from the striking the bearing directly. 4. Remove the bearing cartridge from the hot oil. Wipe off the excessive oil. Drop into the place with it over the shaft. 5. Remove the grease thrower from the hot oil. Wipe off the excessive oil. Shrink in the shaft with chamfered side out, holding the place solidly against the shoulder on the shaft until it is cool. 6. Fill the grease pocket with the bearing cartridge half full with the Westinghouse grease M7280. 1. Remove the bearing from the hot oil. Wipe off the inner and outer fits. Immediately drop them into place with the cartridge boring and still expanded. Do not force this assembly. The bearing slip must be in place. Hold the bearing solidly. Place it again with the grease thrower and until tight. 8. Properly apply the bearing lock washer, lock nut, and lock securely. Fill the spaces between the balls and the bearing with the Westinghouse grease M72801. Fill the grease pocket with the outer bearing cap with a half full with the Westing grease M728-1. Bolt the cap with its gasket in place of the bearing cartridge. Notice some portion of the grease and the bearing cap should make contact with the bearing as when assembled. Check to make sure the ultimate fitting is not damaged. Assembling the generator. Assemble the generator in horizontal position. Protect the communicator, wrapping the heavy finished paper. When placing the armature back into the frame, the 2 armatures removable studs inserted with the tap holes of the bearing cartridges act as a guide to bring the bearings cartridge into position, lining it up with the bolt holes in the housing. 4. The lift of the armature heavy rope around the core moved slowly into the frame using a piece of pipe over the content of the shaft extension at the communicator to guide the armature into place. Take care of the armature does not rub in the poles, that the commuter does not rub the brush holder boxes. 5. When it's found, some forces need to pull the bearing bracket cartridge into place with the communicator ending house. It is available to use 1/2 inch bolts longer than 4 1/2 inch bolts regularly, holding the cartridge into the housing. The 2 longer bolts can be inserted through the holes in the housing and used to pull the bearing of the cartridge close enough to find the final position in the housing that the 4 regular bolts can be tightened. Place the almanite fitting in the bearing cap. Replace the coupling disc and fan assembly. Replace the flash fish paper and communicator lower brush. Alright, instructions for line up a single bearing operation engine. See the contact face for the generator coupling disc of the engineering flywheel and the bell housing if it's in or clean with no spurs or no burrs or rust spots. Check the coupling face for the engine wheel to make sure that it's perpendicular with the axle of the crankshaft. This is done by fixing the surface gauge rapidly in the engine bed plate, recording the total eccentric shown in the gauge of the flywheel face of the one commuter regulation. The total eccentricity should not be 5/10,000ths of an inch. Support of the armature lower pane pole pieces strip the fiber 3/32ths of an inch thick are placed so that they can be withdrawn when the generator is assembled on the engine. 4. The generator should not be adjusted until the concentric for the engine shaft. The general fan will not freely enter the engine bell housing. 5. Move the generator toward the engine until the coupling of the fits with the just engaged by the frame free. With the engine bell housing, insert the coupling bolts and the screws until they just snug. 6. Remove the fiber strips that were used to support the armature. 7. Re-engage the frame of the flywheel fits. Insert all frame bolts. 8. Gradually tighten bolts alternating between the coupling and frame fits of all the bolts and tighten. Take the precautions so that the fits enters without being forced. The frame and the bell housing fit must be pulled home into the cup by the coupling bolts. The bell housing bolts must be tightened at the same time the coupling bolts are being tightened. Alright, your Type 189R7 generator, general data, maximum safety RPM 2500 and volts 400, maximum amperes 650, shield pump amperes 12.0, maximum battery field amperes 4. Brushers, number of brushers 4, brush per arm 2, national grade of brushes, size of brushes, brush tension full, length brush 8 to 9 pounds, bearing C, the removable parts for the order information type rail line, free bit bearing, lubrication using Weston ball rolling bearing grease M72801, normal plate bearings at center poles at 11.188 and communicating poles at 11.560. Weights armature complete generator 150 pounds. Resistance to winding at 25 degrees Celsius. Armature 0.12 ohms, 0.9 ohms for the communicating field. Main shield field 9.6 ohms. 3 main shield battery shield for joint 3.8 ohms. Service field 0.0034 ohms. Reference drawings outlined bearings, field wiring diagrams, armature wide bearings. Sorry, wrong one. This shows you generator lining, generator drawing. Windings, more windings. I think that's section 4 Section 4 traction